Hope you had a good break. Charged up on coffee and all those good things. Our next case study is going to be from Swisscom, and we're going to hear from their partnership with Axon Vibe. And we got Kathrin, Hösli, and Thomas Annicq. So, Kristen and Thomas. Come on. Thank you. All right. Thanks. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Derek.
So, hello everyone. My name is Kathrin and I am with Swisscom, member of the board of the Digital Business Unit. This unit is a unit that was founded in January this year, so it's still very fresh, and it actually has two main focus topics. And one is to build an ecosystem of startups that we have invested in, so mainly joint ventures, and we want them to benefit of each other. So it's really a beneficial ecosystem. Everyone can benefit of each other. And the other focus topic is that we are responsible for all the innovation topics with startups for the entire company. And here's just a quick overview of what the topics are that we currently look at and which topics we are looking for additional innovation startups that have something special to offer in these areas. So it's fintech on one hand, smart data, artificial intelligence, and then IT telco as big topics. And then on the bottom you see additional ones. I'm not going to go too much into detail. One special thing is there's one call for innovation that is still going on until the end of October, focusing on the next generation virtual telco functions and services. So if anyone in here does anything in that area, please contact Gregory because he's the one that will get you in touch with the people responsible for that. So what we want to focus on today is mainly like the collaboration that we have. And so I briefly split up the things, the different services or components that we offer to our startups when we work together. One is the financial contribution, which is the venture fund, national and international. But we offer a lot more because we believe that if we only invest in something, we only get parts of it out of it. We want to get more out of it, and it has to be a strategic partnership. And it also always has to be a strategic investment. And one component which is very important, and based on the work that I did previously, I realized it's one of the most important, especially now in this collaboration at first. It's really the market access and the network. Because having access to the sales channels, having access to the customer base helps a lot, because you don't need to focus on building up a new customer base to test certain functionalities, a proposition, when you're actually working on developing a product market fit. Of course, we also offer telco assets. So we have an SDK of the IO platform, which is a basic messaging and VoIP calling platform that we developed ourselves. Then, of course, telco and cloud infrastructure and data insights, where we're still focusing on widely to invest in more. And last but not least, of course, the expertise, because it always is very helpful in our shift, in our collaboration. We always realized after a while we have to shift a little bit, and there we have to pivot something different. And in those situations, it's always great to just have someone that is an expert in that specific area, and you can have a meeting, get a quick intro, and then you see, is that topic really the topic that you want to look into, or is it something different which you didn't really realize before? So this is basically what is generic. Axon Vibe is a company that we have been working together for a year now, pretty much, like August last year. We have invested in Axon Vibe, and we hold currently 3%, so it's not that big. But we have 3 FTEs within Swisscom that work permanently with Axon Vibe. And yeah, I think it's now up to Thomas to say something more about the company and the proposition and our common goal.
Thank you. So Axon Vibe is a Swiss startup. Our founders sold their previous company to Google as one of the core technologies of Google Maps. Then they have another startup called Axon Insight, which focuses more on understanding the strength of networks between individuals from public data sets. And then they formed Axon Vibe, combining those two strengths, basically. And so what Axon Vibe does is we focus on understanding context in a world flooded with data. So we've developed our own smart location and sensor SDKs that have to strike that right balance between battery optimization and getting the right data to our analytics team. They then take that data, extract a contextual understanding from this. Based on that, we can start anticipating human behavior, and we can start delivering timely, relevant, and contextual information to the user. So it's, in essence, a user-centric communication channel between individuals, companies, and communities. An example of this is a partnership that we are currently working on with the Swiss Railway. So we're developing a digital assistant for them. The Swiss Railway is the most used, or is actually the most used app in Switzerland. I think they have on 80% of the phones. And so they wanted to give their users a travel assistant feature very much like Google Now. And so we built this for them. It helps you navigate your day. It makes sure that you get to your train in time, that you're aware of any changes, and that your ticket automatically changes as your journey evolves. And then on top of that, we have we're connecting into the extended travel chain. So everything from your Uber to your bike share systems to your car sharing systems. The second big component besides this travel assistant is to make the travel more seamless. So we have a smart ticketing solution for them. We understand when a user gets on the train, where they're getting off the train, and so we can calculate the journey in the background and then charge the user's credit card. So they never actually actively have to think of buying a ticket anymore. And all this only works because we have this really Swiss, the Swiss roots of and the Swiss understanding of data privacy. It's something that's core to the company. It is your data. You can delete it. You can edit it. You can see. It's extremely transparent. And so everything that we learn about a user, we will surface to the user, and they can interact with it. So for us, a partnership with Swisscom was very was a no-brainer. Right? It's a strategic investor, but you couldn't wish for a better one, I think. It's very rare in Switzerland. Swisscom is actually one of the most admired brands. Which is not always true in the rest of the world. That a telco is such an admired brand, and it actually helps us. It opens so many doors for us. So we're quite excited about this one-year partnership and going. So.
Hiding in the audience. So I'll come up for the discussion part. Thanks a lot, guys. As I'm walking up, I'll mention I got a lost iPhone here. So if somebody can identify it, I'll give it to the stage crew. Right here, and you can pick it up in the green room. So a lost iPhone there, if you can hold it in the green room. Great. Sorry to interrupt, unless that's your phone.
No.
Okay. Good. Okay, so what we have here is one of the different situations where the network operator is participating more as an investor, right, than as a user of the technology. Is that right? Or are you also a big user of the technology?
Well, I think it's a bit of a mix. We're investors, we're working and we're developing the solution together.
Yes.
And we plan to use the SDK in components of our ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So that's very important to us. It's not just something that we do for partners, but we want to use it for our own companies.
So I understand how the SDK was used for build this train application, just from what you just said. And how do you see it being extended further, and how can Swisscom make more use of it?
Well, one project where we're working on at the moment is we own it's like Yellow Pages. It's called Local Search, and it's also another one of the most downloaded apps in Switzerland. There, however, we always had the problem that we had many downloads, but not that many know-how about the users of the application. And therefore, it matches ideally, because with the SDK, we learn a lot about the user, and then we can really use a specific proposition for the application, because the most researched component of the application is restaurants and bars. And so we're now developing a recommendation sidekick for food and drinks.
Yep.
And then it's exactly the same concept. We can reuse 80% and then just define one specific sidekick. Yep. And so it's what we're doing.
Who builds that? Then you just use the SDK that Thomas has provided and have Swisscom engineers build that end application? Or do you partner with them to build this?
We have a very close relationship, but the ones actually then integrating it in the application is Local Search and not Axon.
Okay. And let's jump back to these formulaic questions I want to ask everybody when they come up with a case study is, how did these two companies connect originally? So Thomas, maybe you could take a little trip into history and tell us how you connected with Swisscom.
Well, I think originally it started in the days of the previous company called Annicq.
What was the name?
It was called Annicq.
Annicq, okay.
Yes, and so I think that's where our founders met the team of Swisscom.
Yep.
And over time, they've actually started to do a lot of projects together. They've looked. There's a really cool project that we did with BMW, I believe, when as Mini started to build their dealerships all over Switzerland.
Yeah.
Looking at the catchment areas, and there it was really interesting because it was a really it was using the Swisscom data about people's movement patterns in the country, trying to understand, okay, where are the optimal locations for this?
So when you talk about privacy and you talk about using movement data, I go, okay, how do you do that? Is it fully anonymized in some way?
Yes. It's fully anonymized. There's no way you can tie this ever back to a user. The really cool thing in working with Swisscom is that they have. I mean, for them, it's the most important thing is, of course, is their core product is to make sure that no one ever breaches the privacy there. So that's for them, that's super important. But on the other hand, the way you would anonymize this data has implications on the uses afterwards, right?
Limits them always, right?
Yeah, and so you can, and there's a ton of different ways that you can go around anonymizing this data that open or close doors afterwards for this. And so that's one of the cool things in working with Swisscom is that they're very open in this dialogue. They will work with you to see, okay, well, if you go this way in the anonymization, that doesn't help you for this application. So let's turn it around.
So Swisscom has always been one of my favorite operators in terms of innovation capture. And part of it, I think, is because it's a smaller country and a smaller network. And if you're, not to bear any malice to AT&T, but if you're AT&T in this massive market, you had historic Bell Labs and AT&T Labs, and you had this massive R&D history that did phenomenal things through the decades. But you have this culture of building reliance on not invented here syndrome and things that were invented by your company, where Swisscom has, by virtue of size, always look to partner and find other solutions and bring them in. So it's not that big a transition for you to join the modern world, right?
Well, I think it still is a challenge for every older company, let's say, because you have to be able to still provide services that were invented maybe 40 years ago for the military and then have all the legacy systems. And so, in my point of view, we have challenges, as everyone else does as well. But having this new unit now is helping a lot because now everything is together and the decisions made are over there. Like he's the one that's taking the decisions. And so I think that helps a lot and it gives you a focus and it enables you to be quick and then...
So in Swisscom is doing investments. Are you always investing only in solutions and companies you know you can use, or are you investing first and then seeing how it fits a business unit?
There are different types of investments, but we only invest in strategic topics. So we don't invest in anything that has nothing to do with anything that we deal with.
Yes.
And now in our division, for example, we have a vertical of fintech.
Yep.
And there we usually start with proof of concept. We see what we could do together, and then based on that, we decide, do we invest? How do we invest? How is the partnership?
Yep. So, Thomas, when was the year of the Swisscom investment in your company?
Say that again?
What was the year that they invested in Axon Vibe? The Swisscom invested.
Yeah, so they started, or for us, the way it started was an introduction to the team.
Yes.
That they provided. That was the first thing. The second thing was that was extremely helpful for us is as you know, when you're a startup, you start with a very concrete vision of this is what we want to build.
Right.
Doesn't always go along that path,
But
right?
you need a good story. You need
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there's always ups and downs,
Yeah.
and there's changes in priorities, and so you need a partner that can understand that.
Yeah.
And so Swisscom has been extremely helpful and understanding of how how the different market feedback drove a change in direction.
Let me ask you this then. So Axon Vibe, as working with Swisscom, you have an investment from them. Has that opened doors to then expand into other countries and regions?
Yes. So that's when you're taking on a strategic investor, it's always one of the questions you ask, right? Is like, is this closing doors or is this opening doors? For us, it's been a door opener. The advantage with Swisscom is that Switzerland is a small market. They're by far the most dominant player there, and they're a very well respected player. And so they open doors both locally, which have been very beneficial to us, to their own companies, but also to companies that are in their network.
Yep.
And then internationally as well, for us to if we wanted to talk to any telco, I would call Kathrin, and should be able to open that door, I think.
So you could use them for introductions, but then obviously also as a reference.
But yeah.
So I'd like to remind everybody, it's dark out there, but if you walk up to a microphone, we'll try to spot you and integrate your question for Thomas or Kathrin. So feel free to walk up. Otherwise, we have a couple of questions I'll ask, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, and you can always reach us, either Kathrin or myself. I think our contact details, you can on the website, you can find us. So.
Yeah.
And while you're saying that, why don't I give you a chance to pitch kind of, so what would you offer to other telcos around the world if you could?
It's a good question. So we are in a position to provide some. When you have your existing ecosystem of apps and partners, you don't often have this communication channel of that has the user in mind. Something where it's not an advertising channel. It's something where you can talk to the user on the user's terms. And this is what we provide. So this digital assistant component that fits in anything from the transportation industry all the way to search engine to.
Sounds good. So profile, a knowledge of the customer and profiling the customer and the ability to deliver targeted services.
Exactly.
Kathrin,
on the user's terms.
Oh, sorry.
On the user's terms.
On the user's terms as well, importantly, right? So not interrupting them, but
exactly.
knowing their preferences is not just the things they like, but when they like them and
exactly
where they like them.
Yeah, because it's there's so much data about a user today, and this line between a creepy message popping up versus a service is very difficult to walk.
It is.
And you can only do this if you say like our priorities towards the user, and not towards the surfacing of so many messages. That's the only way you can do this.
So Kathrin, you're in charge, or you do head of growth areas. So what are some of the growth areas that you think are really big right now?
Well, growth areas to us in that division are the companies that we want to build up as a joint venture and that are part of our ecosystem. So it's really the topics that we think are still missing in our ecosystem and that we want to build up.
Yep. And is there anyone that strikes you as the biggest one for the next year ahead?
Well, at the moment, it is more of a really making the plans grow and not really getting that many new plans,
Yep.
in my point of view.
So you're at a stage of trying to grow the
Yeah, we
existing
have
partners.
a lot of small
Yep.
plans and projects that we initiated,
Yes.
and now we really have to
And
make
that sounds
it
a
work.
lot like a VC firm that often
Yeah.
turns to focusing on growing their existing
Yeah.
portfolio.
And I think it's also very beneficial if you don't have too many topics, because then you don't really diverge and you keep the focus.
Right, which also sounds like the VC firms. Who say, I don't
Yeah.
want to have too many that I can't actually help the companies I'm
Yeah.
working on. Okay, good. Good to know. All right, with that, I think, the microphones are free. So I'd like to say thank you very much for joining
you.
us and
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So let me see, check my message. So next up, I'd like to invite a speaker from the Philippines, from PLDT, although it looks like I had a substitution, so I don't know who